Yeah.
We're putting out what kind of ad? A Craigslist ad?
Craigslist ad. Yeah. Now hiring a mother.
We need a
Texas.
mom. We're just not really great at adulting. So we need a mom to just, be a mom and help us and stay on track and make appointments like the dentist. Because we have to
put it off for 3 years.
Yeah, we both need to see a dentist. So we need a mom, and both of our moms live in California.
Too far away. All right.
Okay, hi.
All right, episode 1. I'm just filling Steph in and you guys on the fly as we go here. So we have 3 different segments for the podcast. Mm-hmm. Diaries of a Dog Rescue, which is going to be focused on you and I.
Okay.
Our relationship and how's it grown.
Okay.
And then
this is news to me, by the way. This is the first time I'm hearing this.
I'm filling Steph in as we go here. So we're going to have 3 different segments for this podcast. Diaries of a Dog Rescue, again, is focused on Steph and I. We're really big on showing face, right?
Yeah.
I mean, part of being in rescue is you guys getting to know us, because I think that's important to know, when you're donating to the rescue or you're following Steph and I, following the journeys of these dogs, it's important to get to know us. And on Instagram, a lot of you have, but if you're new, you might not know the full story here. And it's not something we get to talk about a whole lot because we're capped at 90 seconds on Instagram and we're always running around with dogs.
Well, and whenever we do lives too, we have so many other things that we need to get to that we don't get to focus on like one topic.
Well, and the lives are mostly Patreon too.
Correct.
Right. It's the weekly Patreon live. So with Diaries of a Dog Rescue, the goal is to basically go through Steph's upbringing, what really geared her towards rescue, and kind of lit this passion inside her up until the point she met me, and beyond, and how
you enabled this.
Yeah, and how our relationship has grown. So I envision it, these first 2 episodes, it'll be me interviewing Steph. Up until the point she met me, Steph will interview me, so you guys can learn a little bit about our upbringing there, and how we got into this, maybe what influenced us
right
at a young age. And from there, we will just kind of on an episode by episode basis talk about our crazy rescue life, the move to Texas, go through each dog and their journeys individually and how Steph and I have grown together up to present day. So it might be a very long series.
And the uncensored stuff.
Ooh.
The uncensored. The stuff that people may not get, they probably don't even think about that goes into rescue or...
Not uncensored with us.
Oh.
I was like, oof.
No, that's extra.
Maybe a little bit. But yeah, it'll be a very raw version of it because I really do want to go through, like a monthly basis of how we've progressed as a rescue, our experiences behind the scenes.
Yeah.
With different adopters, rescue situations, animal control officers, cases. Really having an opportunity to actually dive in, I think, is going to be a lot of fun for everyone. Because on Instagram, it's so oriented on the dogs.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's very straightforward. Here's what we know. Here's the history. Here are the notes we got, surrender paperwork, whatever it may be. Here's the medical. And we're always in a hurry. So having time to talk about the conversations we had behind the scenes, like you think about a dog like Logan.
Right.
And those conversations and how we made those medical calls, I think will be really good. So Diaries of a Dog Rescue, number 1. We're going to have Revenge Tour recaps, of course, as segment number 2, where we're going to highlight some of our favorite Revenge Tour dogs. And again, talk about more of the behind the scenes and how those conversations came about, and the things that you don't get to always see on Instagram in a 90-second reel.
Okay.
Segment number 3, everyone's favorite, just topic and Q&A. So it'll be a lot of ranting and raving. I will warn you now. Steph and I,
we tend to kind of go on rants and tangents. And again, this is why we need a mom, because we need to stay on track. But we'll have questions and bullet points. We promise we'll stay on track.
I put up one Q&A post a while back and there's like 700 comments. So we have a ton of questions.
Yeah.
And it's, it's tough. We do try and engage with everyone on Instagram. It's tricky because we're constantly multitasking with Instagram throughout the day. We have full-time remote jobs. We're obviously working with the dogs all day, getting them ready for adoption, vet appointments. So it's kind of like jump in and to answer some of the really good questions. There's just not enough time in the day. So we'll have the topic Q&A segment, and those are going to be the 3. So episode 1, Diaries of a Dog Rescue.
Oh God, interview me.
Yes.
All right, hit me.
Steph's beginning
So it all started.
Learn all about a baby Stephanita. And I'm just going to pretend I don't know any of this. But yeah, I mean, so give me a little bit of backstory on where you grew up.
Okay.
Obviously, well, I guess you guys don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Southern California in Los Angeles. I am half Cuban, half Guatemalan. Single mom. She raised me, always had 2 jobs. She was super hardworking to put me through like private Catholic schools because she didn't want me to turn out to be a head. But I from like the very beginning, as a very, very young child, I was an only child. I always had an animal in the house, and that was like my best friend. And I always had a different relationship with animals than I even saw some of my cousins have, or, even the elders in the family. So I always had a different connection with animals. And I was always that person that would find a stray dog everywhere I went.
Even as a kid?
Yeah,
Huh?
as a kid. I mean, I came home with multiple animals as let's say teenage years, because at that point I'm driving on my own, right?
And was
And
your mom a fan of that?
no.
No.
My mom and my stepdad were not a fan of me constantly bringing animals home. And it's actually funny, a dog that I found when I was 16 or 17
Well, who was the first dog?
that I ever had.
Yeah, well, you found, I guess.
Oh God, I don't remember that.
That young.
Oh
Huh?
no, I mean, it's,
Also, what was baby Stephanie doing walking around the streets of LA?
well, I wasn't. That's what I mean, it was like just in my front yard. Dogs would just be roaming.
Just knew.
Yeah, but I mean, from the moment that I got a license and I was able to drive anywhere
And actually pick up dogs.
and actually pick up dogs myself and not, be in the passenger seat where I'm like, Mom, pull over. And she's like, the hell we're pulling over. So,
Well, and so you guys know, Steph's mom is awesome.
oh no,
She's not a
wonderful.
cold person. Let's backtrack just for a second.
Okay.
So your mom.
You're defending my mom.
No. I mean, yes, we love Amalia, but also Amalia was not born and raised in the U.S.
No, she was born in Guatemala, and there's a bunch of stray dogs everywhere. And so the culture is different. You just, if it's a street dog, it's a street dog. And, dogs and animals are meant to live outside. And I never saw it that way. It was in a constant argument in the house. If we had a dog, unless it was like a tiny, tiny dog, it was an outdoor dog. And I hated that. And, but that was just how she grew up.
Very different culture from that standpoint.
Yeah. So if there was a stray dog, she wasn't going to waste time pulling over. That's someone else's responsibility. That's someone else's animal that they let out. So
where do you think you got that from? Because you don't really have family members that have that passion for animals. Is it
just one.
innate?
My uncle does.
Okay.
Yeah, and he grew up in Guatemala and then came to the United States as a teenager. And he's another one. He's probably the only one in the family that we have that like crazy animal gene. He has 5 dogs, and if he finds a stray, he's going to bring it home and dress it up in little outfits, and like his wife will be like, what the hell's happening? He's like, we have another dog. But that's
okay.
So I think it's just part of you. I think you're born like a super animal lover.
You think it's more of a nurturing thing? Or do you think there's something innate in you?
I think there's something innate because my mom is super nurturing.
That's true.
My mom is like
at a daycare.
Yeah, my mom is so nurturing, but she has that distinction between like
Animals
and kids or humans. So, so I think it's something that you're really born with. Sure, you can learn it, but I think you're born
to do it
with
at the level you're doing it at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to
So
your teenagers.
Yeah. So my teenage years, I'm not saying one of the first dogs, but as a teenager that I brought home, I must have been like 16 or 17. Because I remember I got off work. I think I was at work so long ago, so many moons ago. I was working at In-N-Out Burger, and I got off at like midnight, and I drove my friend Jessica home. And when I was dropping her off, I saw something move inside of a like Jack in the Box bag that was on the side of the road. And I was like, what the hell is that? And I get out of the car, and it's this tiny little Chihuahua. And so I kind of found her in a not so nice part of town.
Yeah.
And so I ended up calling her I named her Hennessy.
Hennessy. Okay, what happened to Hennessy?
So Hennessy, I brought her home and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, oh God, my parents are going to flip out. So I brought Hennessy inside and my mom and my dad were like, no. Like immediately they were like, no. And I was like, well, I'm not putting her outside. They're like, all right. We had like a beautiful garage. My dad used to work with antiques and had his own antique shop. So the garage was beautiful. He goes, all right, just put her in the garage for now, and we'll deal with it in the morning. And I said, okay. So we put her in the garage and I go there in the morning and she's gone. And I was like, what did you guys do? And they're like, we didn't do anything. We thought she was still in there. And so she got out somehow. I mean, there's like a back door, but the opening wasn't big enough for her to get out. So I have no idea. So she gets out and we open the front door and she's curled up in a little ball on our front doorstep. And like, I've heard this so many times, but men are usually the ones that are like, no more dogs. And my stepdad was like, it's meant to be. She's part of the family, and like picks her up and brings her inside. I was like, what the?
Because if you don't respect that, that makes a lot of sense actually. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, he is Hindu and he believes in reincarnation and, everyone's connected somehow. And he just needed.
And also, yeah.
Yeah, he needed a sign.
I was going to say 99% of the time, because we have this with, doctors that have come by and it's like, oh, I really had to persuade my husband to be here. And it's like, yeah, okay, sure. And like 2 days into the trial run, the husband's the one breaking all the rules.
Right, on the couch.
The dog's in bed.
Yeah, so, So that was like one of the first dogs that I brought home after getting my license. And my stepdad was like, okay, well, she's staying. And after that, it took some convincing for like a few dogs, but I would, pick up dogs and
so you're talking like literally from the time you could drive, you just started picking up stray dogs and you just bring them home.
I would bring them home and I would find them homes. Usually my mom would like, text some of her friends or something. But if I was on my way to school or on my way to work, I would drop them off at the shelter. Yeah. It wasn't as bad of an issue as it is right now with overpopulation.
Also, you're a 17-year-old kid.
Right.
You're a 17-year-old kid that's working full time.
Right.
Going to school. I mean, it's not something that you're necessarily supposed to be thinking about at 17 years old living up in LA.
Right. So I would drop them off at the shelter and I would like try to keep track. And I actually, because I went to a Catholic high school, we had to do community service hours.
Right.
So I think it was every semester you would pick a different topic, and it would be I worked at a retirement home, like a hospice. It's assisted living place.
Yeah.
The shelter. So we had to pick every semester a different genre to kind of donate our time. And I loved going to the shelter. Yeah. I mean, it would make me extremely sad, but I loved going to the shelter.
I mean, it shows, like you said, it's kind of innate in you though, because we see it all the time where people can't physically go to the shelter.
Yeah.
Or mentally or emotionally can't handle it. And you're at 17 doing that.
Yeah. Why is our pug losing his shit right now?
Do you want to go?
Just open the door.
We had to take a little break to correct our pug. That might be a running thing on this podcast. Okay, so finding stray dogs, volunteering at the shelter.
Yep. Oh yeah. So it was just an innate thing. Like, yeah, it made me sad, but I figured maybe they weren't getting enough playtime. Maybe people weren't visiting them. So yeah. Sure, it made me sad, but I was excited to go to the shelter. I wanted to go to the shelter. Yeah. So that started at a young age. And honestly, I think it was really important that I was involved in so many different types of like nonprofit work at a young age. I mean, it was mandatory for school, but I enjoyed it.
People don't get to go see.
Right. So I was able to experience a lot as a young kid, but yeah, I was always that person that found the animals and the animals would find me. And it wasn't just dogs. It was cats. It was birds. I became friends with
the birds.
Yeah, I know. I became friends with a man that used to rehabilitate like crows and seagulls.
Yep.
And he had his little office right next to Gold's Gym in Venice. And if I found, because I started going to Gold's Gym when I was 18. So whenever I'd find a bird, I knew to contact him. Yeah. So I had my little rescue contacts at 18. But yeah, so that's how it started. Yes.
Well, I mean, there's a work ethic side to this too, right? That I think people are interested in. So you're talking 17, 18 years old.
Yes.
You're working full time. You're going to school full time.
Yes.
And now you're training. And for those that don't know, Steph was a nationally qualified figure athlete.
I was.
And a very, very good one. We'll insert some B-roll for you guys.
Thanks.
Well, because it is, I mean, you guys that follow us on Instagram are familiar with the days. It's like 365 days a year. We're up at 5 a.m. and we're moving until 11 p.m. So there is a massive work ethic side of this. I think your upbringing plays into that.
Yeah.
And not just your mom. I mean,
Right.
You watched your mom growing up, working multiple jobs, providing for you, being a single mom at times.
Yeah.
And she obviously didn't have the easiest upbringing.
No.
So I think that impacted you in a lot of different ways for sure. But 17, 18 years old, you start training. Did you find that passion for bodybuilding at that time?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
So what was the motive for the gym? Just to look good and pick up dudes?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
No. Kind of funny, actually. I was working my first waitressing job after I left In-N-Out.
And where was that waitressing job?
Hooters. Hooters. Okay, well, yeah, this leads into it, right? So I started working at Hooters as a hostess, then a waitress, then I bartended, and then I started doing marketing managing for them. So as a marketing manager for that Santa Monica location, I was involved with partnerships. Mm-hmm. So I basically got the Hooters in Santa Monica a partnership with Gold's Gym Venice, and they got 50% off to eat there, and all the girls got to train basically for free. I think it was like $20 a month or something that we had to pay, but we basically got a free membership to Gold's Gym. So all the girls got to train there for free. They got all their food at 50% cost. Yeah. So they would host like their meetings or parties, and it would literally be, half the cost. So I created that partnership, and so that's how I started going to the gym.
At 18 years old.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice.
So, and it turned into, my home gym. Mm-hmm. Then I went away to college, and I went to UNLV, and I was there for 2.5, 3 years.
We're skipping a little bit. Why did you end up going to UNLV?
Okay. God. Okay. So I was at Santa Monica Community College for 1.5 years. Mm-hmm. And I think, I always tell people, go to community college. Yeah. Figure it out first, especially if you don't know what you want to do. Like, you don't know what your major is going to be. Get all your prerequisites out of the way, and it's going to be a lot. Dude,
you're so young at that age. Yeah,
a lot cheaper to go to community college and just get all of like the English 101 class and the psychology 101.
Doctor or lawyer,
right. Like, if you know what you want to do with your life, great. Yeah. At that point, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought maybe nursing, maybe biochemistry.
Nursing, huh?
Yeah, because
that's what set it off.
Yeah,
that's the initial attraction.
I thought, I would possibly go into the medical field because I was fascinated with like fixing things, which maybe rescue, right? Yeah. So, but then I started taking chemistry and calculus in college, and I was like, oh God.
That's real quick.
Oh, I learned real quick that math is not my subject. So
I think everyone has that wake up call.
Yeah.
At some point, for me, it was playing with Dominican kids.
Okay. Yeah. We're talking about baseball, right?
That's when I realized baseball was not going to work.
You met your first Dominican.
Yeah. I got on a team with a bunch of Dominican kids that were younger than me, and I said, well, baseball's not the play. So I went to community college, and I was there for 1.5 years. And I remember it was November, and my mom said, what are you doing with your life? You've been in a community college for 1.5 years, and, when are you going to go to a university? And I understood where she was coming from, because she worked really hard to put me through a private school, and she wanted me to go to a university and in a college that is respectable. And I don't know if it was so much because that's what she wanted for me, or because she wanted to be able to tell people too, like, look at what my daughter's doing, which I get, it's a very proud person. Yeah. She loves to brag about me. So we got into a little bit of an argument and a little tiff. And so I don't
after
think she's
that
actually
tiff,
forgiven Steph yet.
no, we actually had this conversation last month when we were in Sedona together. She goes, that's not how the story went. I was like, Molly, that's exactly how the story went.
Anyway, yeah.
So we get into a little tiff about how I'm still at a community college and I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And so that night I went on the interweb and I found what colleges were accepting spring applicants. And UNLV was one of the first ones to pop up. And I was like, damn, it's out of state though.
That was break number 3. We're doing pretty good. Okay, so you hopped on the interweb
Yes.
and you started looking at college and you realized it was really expensive.
Oh, no. So I was looking at spring applicants, like what college was accepting spring applicants. And I realized it was an out of state college. I was like, oh crap, it's probably going to be out of state tuition.
Yeah.
Well, lucky for me, UNLV did in-state tuition at that time. I don't know if they still do it now, but they did in-state tuition for Hawaii and all of the states on the West Coast. So Washington, Oregon, California. Yeah. So I was like, okay, what's the cost? And I was like, I can do that. I can do that because I've been working and I've been saving, and maybe I'll apply for a grant and it'll help me and I'll get a job when I get there. And so I applied. I got my application letter 2 weeks later. Literally, that's how fast it was, the turnaround time. Because I think I submitted right at the deadline. And it was like 2 weeks or a week before Christmas. And I was like, hey, Mom, I got accepted into a university. And she's like, oh my God. I was like, I'm going to Vegas. She's like, literally like mental breakdown. Right. Oh my, like she was so pissed, so mad that I was going to move away. You're not moving away. I'm like, Mom, this is what you wanted, right? Oh God, I was such a little, like just, that was a petty move on my end.
Yeah.
But
it's good you're admitting it.
Yeah. Oh, so petty. But, I don't regret it for a second. Like it was such a good experience to move out, get my own apartment. I was living on my own, paying college out of pocket.
Yeah.
Also very interesting walking into the UNLV admissions office with, $9,000 cash to pay for my semester, but it's Vegas, right? So I had friends of mine that were strippers, so I'm sure they paid their stuff in cash, but yeah, it was, it was a great experience. I loved that I was independent at a young age and that I was doing my own thing and I got to make my own rules. And so I was there for 2.5 years and moved back to California. I actually lived with my mom for like a month and she was so excited. She thought that I was moving back home. And then I was like, oh no, I found an apartment like down the street and moved there. And literally I was 5 minutes away from her.
Well, so let's backtrack though to college in Vegas. So what?
Do we really want to talk about that?
I mean, was there anything? Well, okay. I mean, college in Vegas, I would imagine you maybe got in a little bit of trouble.
Not really.
But you also had a dog at the time.
Correct.
Your first dog.
The love of my life.
Oh, yeah, see, there's some dog-related stuff. So you left for school.
Yeah.
You're independent on your own for the first time, living in Vegas.
Correct.
Why did you get a dog? Because I feel like 99% of the people we talk to, we would be like, yo,
I
would not ready for a dog at this time. We're probably not going to adopt you.
No, I would have not adopted to me at all.
But the love of your life, Bruce
Correct.
Goose, you ended up getting it. It was a terrible example for you guys.
I know.
But yeah, you got to talk about Bruce. So
I know.
When did that come into play?
So.
And why?
Oh God.
Like why at that time?
Well, it's actually kind of a funny story. Bruce was actually the ex's dog. Mm-hmm. So the guy I was seeing at the time, he grew up with a Weimaraner. Like his family had a Weimaraner and he really wanted a dog. And we were living together at the time. He ended up moving into my apartment and he was like, I really want a Weim. And I ended up like going online and seeing if there was like any Weimaraners on Craigslist. And I was like, all right, do you want to go look at these puppies? And we went, which now looking back, I'm like, oh God, literally, the site was called oodle.com. It wasn't Craigslist. It was oodle.com.
I mean, everyone goes through that and kind of learns
right
before you get into rescue. Yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, I found Weimaraner puppies. Do you want to go look? And you never just go look at puppies, right? And so we walked in and Mom and Dad were there and they were huge. And like Moose is now, like they came barreling through the back door, and I was like, oh my God, like this is the dog that he wants. And they're just all over the place. And I fell in love with a little girl named Ireland. Still remember her name. And Chris fell in love with Bruce, and his name was Hopper because he didn't walk. He hopped everywhere. I was like, oh God, I was like, what are we doing with this dog? It was so cute. He was like bunny hopping. And I was like, all right, well, like, this is your dog. So we'll take Hopper. And the lady was trying to convince us. Clearly, this lady did not have the puppy's interest at heart, because she's like, well, if you take one, I'll give the other one 50% off. I'm like, we are two like
50% off.
We are two like 20-year-olds. What? Why are you trying to sell us two Weimaraners, litter mates at that? But anyways,
that's a rant for the topic.
Another day. But so we go home with Hopper, and literally the first night Hopper slept in bed like on top of me, and he would follow me around the house everywhere. And Chris was like this is this is my
typically do.
Right. Like this is supposed to be my dog. And Bruce literally was my dog from the very second that we brought him home. And, then that relationship ended. Bruce stayed with me, and he was my buddy. We did everything together. I mean, my whole world revolved around making sure he got exposure, exercise. I would wake up super early in the morning to go jogging with him, and then I'd go to class, and then I'd come back home in between class and work and take him out. My boss at the time was super awesome. He would let me bring Bruce to work. So he was in the office with me sometimes. And then I would go to the dog park at night because it was super hot in Vegas at night. So, all that happened. That's where I got Bruce, moved back to California. I was with my mom for about a month. And then I found a little duplex apartment 5 minutes away from her because I wanted a yard for Bruce. No. This was many moons ago. But I think it was like $1,500 a month for.
So crazy to think about.
I know. It was $1,500 a month, but that was a lot at the time. And it was.
I think you just aged yourself.
Oh God. I mean, it was a duplex, like super tiny, probably no more than like 700 square foot apartment. Yeah. But it had a yard, and that's all I cared about. I was like, I need a yard for the dog. That's all I care about. But yeah, I mean, that dog was with me through my 20s into my 30s. He was a heart dog. And I think, it's one of the reasons I actually started the rescue is because of that bond that I had with Bruce was just so beautiful that no other dog will ever be able to replace. Like, I'm not going to be able to replace that relationship that I had. But man, I'd love for people to experience that at least once in their lifetime. And so
when you talked about that a little bit too on Instagram, I think that's a big part of why you love rescue so much. As much as we say we don't like people, what I mean? I think people in rescue, typically you like dogs. People are like a byproduct of that. But you do thoroughly love when we find that perfect match. And I can see it on your face. And it's, especially like when there's young kids or, we adopt to a family with girls. I think Steph really, like it hits home for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you're envisioning them getting that dog and that connection that you had.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, you have your heart dog, and having that type of connection with an animal is just so special. And being able to gift that to someone is, I mean, you can't duplicate that feeling. So yeah, I mean, Bruce is very much like a big reason why I started the rescue. But so, flash forward, moved back home, living in California. I started seeing another person, and we were together for about 9 years, and we bought a house in South LA. And this is where the rescue like really just organically came about. And the day that we were
this time, I guess when you bought the house,
27,
27. Okay.
I think 27, 28. Yeah, somewhere in there. So, but the day we were looking at houses, it was literally the last house that popped up on Zillow. I was like, all right, let's go check this house out. Like, we were so burnt out from looking at houses. I'm like, all right, let's go look at this last house. It literally just popped up on Zillow. And we pull into the street and there's a stray dog on the street. And my ex at the time was like, no, we are not picking up dogs right now. I was like, but he's like, if we move into this neighborhood, like, we're going to be finding dogs. I was like,
this was foreshadowing.
Yes. He knew what he was getting himself into. And actually he knew way before then, because I came home with a few dogs through the duration of our relationship, along with random birds as well. Anyways, so we actually found 2 stray dogs while we were looking for houses that day.
Anyway.
And so we ended up buying that house, and the first year of living there, I picked up probably 20 to 30 dogs, and I would go get them scanned. I would take them to the vet. I would get them fixed up. I would post them on the Nextdoor and the Ring app and Facebook pages and try to find their homes. And I rarely ever found their owners. One dog actually was microchipped, and I was able to get a hold of the owner, and the other was like, oh, well, that dog has been missing for years.
Well, I think you had said out of all of the dogs you picked up, you had one family that actually wanted the dog back.
Yeah. One dog. And it was like this tiny little fluffy dog that had gone out and probably ran 7 miles from the location. Out of all of the dogs that I've ever found in South LA, that was the only dog that the owner was like, I want my dog back. All the other dogs, they either never responded, they never had collars, they weren't microchipped, no one ever claimed them. And in LA, if you don't take the dog to the shelter, it's a 30-day stray hold. So they have to hang out with you for 30 days. So typically I would find them a foster home, or I would board them for 30 days. So after a year of doing this, how much money?
Paying out of pocket.
Yeah, I was paying out of pocket because I wasn't a nonprofit. I couldn't ask for donations. So after doing that for a whole year, I decided, all right, you know what? I really this is something I really want to do. And if I really want to do it, I have to take it serious. And for other people to take me serious, I have to make it official and make it legal. And so I filed for a 501c3, my nonprofit license. I got it like 3 or 4 months later. And then I started the whole process of, getting the bank account and, doing the whole thing and all the admin stuff that's not fun. And yeah. And then it just took off from there. I picked up my first medical case as the first dog in the rescue, which is not smart to do because you don't have funds. But I picked up an English bulldog named Darla.
So this was like brand new out of the gate. You picked up and rescued an English bulldog?
Correct.
Yeah,
probably the most expensive breed.
How much was
that? So that was, I can tell you, that was 2019, because the reason I remember it was 2019, not only because that's the year that I officially got the license, but also that's the year I got shingles from stress. Yes. And it was because of how financially stressed I was in the rescue of like, oh my God, how am I going to pay this bill? How am I going to fundraise? I'm constantly online begging people to donate $5 Friday, $5 Friday.
Yeah. People think, you take in, especially because you've always gravitated towards seniors' medical cases. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people assume, because there's a larger following platform now, that when you have this kind of dog in front of you, you must have been raking in donations immediately.
No. I mean, the Instagram page initially was just the Bruce show. Mm-hmm. It was just pictures of Bruce, Walter, Francis, Helen, the 4 dogs I had at the time.
Yeah.
And so it was just their page. And then I started posting the dogs I would find as strays. Right. And then I turned it into the Pawerful Rescue. So I had to change the handle and,
But the point being, it takes a lot longer than I think people realize to build your reputation in rescue.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of rescues out there, and there's a lot of networkers and dogs that need help, and I think it's a lot for people to keep up with how many rescues are popping up or how many rescues are shutting down and closing their doors. And so, yeah, I mean, I started the rescue and I had 1,000 followers on that Instagram page, and it was just my other people who were obsessed with Weimaraners and Dobermans, and they followed that page because they followed my personal page. Right. And so, we all start somewhere. I think a lot of people fear failing at something and they don't start it. And I just, I just said, screw it. I'm going to start this nonprofit. And the first like 2 years was a real struggle.
Yeah.
From like a financial standpoint. The only thing that I didn't struggle with, to be honest with you, is finding fosters in California.
Yeah, your area.
Yeah. Well, it was 2019 and 2020.
That too.
Right? So everyone was home during the pandemic and wanted a buddy and they wanted to help. They wanted to feel like they were doing something. And so everyone was like, yep, I could foster. I have nothing but time. I'm at home all day. Like,
False sense of security.
Yeah. So it was kind of nice in that sense because I was able to rescue a ton of dogs and put them into foster homes. But and then 2020, that whole thing happened and, I separated from my then husband at the time and we filed for divorce and, ended up moving to Texas and.
Well, you're fast forwarding.
Oh, well, yes. Well,
I mean,
obviously.
My bad interview right here. First interview. So it's 2019.
Yes. I had shingles.
And you got shingles. Financial stress, like crazy, working a full-time job.
Yep.
At that point, were you were still competing?
Yes. I think, no. I did my last competition in 2018.
Okay.
I was prepping for that and then I had a really bad injury. So I ripped both of my quads off my hip, from a shoulder press machine at the gym. So the seat collapsed and I tore both my quads and I was like 6 weeks out from like the show. And I was doing a show in Ireland. And so like everything was already paid for. Like the ticket was paid for. My suit had already, gotten there.
Medical bills on top of all that.
Right. And then I had medical bills on top of that. And that injury was a blessing in disguise.
Why is that?
Because for a very long time, I think it was, I had been competing for 4 or 5 years at that time. I had associated myself with being a competitor, and that was my identity. And so when that got taken from me, I had to reevaluate who I was as a person, what I really wanted to do with my life. And I was successful in marketing. I've always done well there. But for some reason, when people asked me what I did, I always said, oh, I'm a fitness competitor.
Right.
I'm like, oh, that's such a small, that was like my thing. That's what made me special, right? Because it was something different that no one else did.
Well, and you had a large following with that too.
Yeah, that's how my following grew initially. It was like, oh,
Figure following, and
yeah.
I think that's fascinating to talk about too, because you flash forward, you go through that injury, and there's so many people that do associate their self-worth with their number on Instagram or YouTube or whatever that following is, and clearly that was not the case for you because you flipped to rescue,
right?
Which is just.
But that was hard.
No, I understand it was.
That
hard,
pivot was really hard.
But I think it takes a different kind of person to do that and commit to that. You know what I mean? So 2019, you start the nonprofit.
Correct.
Right. 2020, let's see, I guess you take back over here. So run me through 2020 on average. How many dogs do you think you took in?
I mean, I think I probably took in 150 dogs in 2020.
150 dogs.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, I think it was like 150 dogs.
And that's just you running the rescue at this point.
Yeah. But it was with fosters. I mean, it was.
That's the thing.
It was so much easier with fosters. And there's like a pro of having fosters and a con of having fosters and a pro of having, the setup that we have now with all the dogs here.
They're personally with us.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's.
Oh my. Your turn.
So 2020 happened.
Trying to remember, when did we meet? Or when did we first talk?
So we met. I think you initially messaged the rescue about Abigail.
Yep, I know.
Which she was.
What year was that?
That was 2019. That was like November 2019. So that was a medical case. An overbred mama with. She had ulcerated masses on her. She had mammary tumors. It was one of the worst cases I'd ever seen. Yep.
Which we get a lot of questions on that one too, because people see the pictures of Abigail. So her mouth was wired shut because those masses were so bad. She was probably not allowing the puppies to feed. Um,
No, no, we speculated that she was really dog reactive. So they had to wire her mouth shut in order to breed her. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Um, yeah, we actually had to put, and I say we, it was
Well,
the
sorry,
kennel
so you
attendant.
guys know, yeah, two reasons why you would wire,
Yeah.
I guess, a mama's mouth shut in that situation.
Yeah. She could have been really vocal too, and they were trying to keep her quiet for whatever reason, but she was extremely dog reactive.
So she was in really rough shape.
Yeah.
I had seen a post of her come up, and I had been playing with the idea of fostering for different rescues at the time.
Yep.
I gravitated towards Steph's rescue in the first place because with where I was at, there was a lot of breed specific rescues, labs, golden retrievers. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I was seeing a lot of senior dogs, a lot of medical dogs, and reaching out to rescues, asking if I could foster, if they would pull this dog. And there just weren't a lot.
Right.
So that's how I found Steph's rescue and then eventually found Abigail. So I reached out.
Yep. And I said no. I said no because I didn't even know if Abigail was going to make it out of the vet.
Right.
She was in. Let me move this really quick. She was in such bad shape. And she had to have basically a double mastectomy. We had to remove both chains, that it was going to be a toss up if she actually survived. So I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up that they could possibly foster a dog if I didn't know if the dog was going to survive or not. So I had to get over that hump first. So when Duke initially reached out about fostering her, I was like, hey, sorry, she's an extreme medical case. I'll get back to you. Basically a roundabout way of saying, hey, no, off. But at that time, I didn't know if she was going to make it or not. So unfortunately, Abigail did not make it. So we didn't obviously proceed with that. But that's initially when he reached out, and then I ended up rescuing another dog named Nova.
First foster.
Yeah, that was his first foster, and Nova was actually a homeless man's dog. Then he asked for my help. I was at the shelter looking at other dogs, and I hear this man sobbing in the lobby, and he's in a walker, and he's sitting down in the seat that the walker has. And I was like, what's going on? He goes, oh, they won't take care of my dog. I don't want to surrender her, but they won't look at her medically. And I look down, and it's this tiny little pitty. She's looking up at me, and she has this massive, both ear infections that, like, her ear was cauliflowered out and was super painful to the touch. And I said, look, I will help you. I will take her to the vet. I won't take her from you, but I will take her to the vet, get her looked at, and bring her back to you. And he goes, okay. I was like, do you trust me? He goes, yes, I trust you. So we exchanged phone numbers. I was like, I will come back tomorrow. Where are you staying? And he was staying in an RV behind the shelter. So I came back the next day. I picked up Nova. I took her to the vet, and they were like, this dog's literally allergic to everything under the sun. Like, this is the worst possible dog that could be a homeless man's dog. And so we started her on antibiotics. We flushed her ear out. I went back to his RV and I said, look, she's in really, really bad shape. She might possibly need a teacup procedure, which basically means they remove the ear canal. And he was like, okay, well, I was like, she needs to be hospitalized. So we hospitalized her for about a week, cleaned her ear out. Her ear actually started to get better. We didn't have to do the Tika. And I was like, look, we can start her on some meds and see if, we can get her to a place where she could possibly come back with you. But right now, I need to keep her on medication and get that inflammation all the way down. And I was like, I can place her into a foster home until she gets better, and then we can talk about bringing her back to you. And he goes, okay, I'm okay with that. I love her. I want what's best for her. So Duke comes into the picture and starts fostering Nova. And, at that point, he had kind of a really great setup. It was a 2-story house. And
I was in Mission Viejo. and I was with my ex at the time, and also had two roommates.
Yep.
So we had two dogs in the house. I had been trying to talk everyone into letting me foster for a while at the time. And then finally with Nova, I got the green light. It's actually funny. Helen, we kind of skipped over that.
Oh, that's right.
Was another dog I had reached out about. Or no, I thought about reaching out. I was trying to convince my ex roommates also to let me take Helen. She's gorgeous, German Shepherd. You guys all know Helen. But yeah, that was a no go. Unfortunately, which we joke about quite a bit, that's the real reason I tricked Steph into falling for me, was just to get Helen. That was the end game goal there. All right. Well,
Dear Lord.
we ran into feeding time with the dogs, so they were going nuts. So we had to get them out. And then we started last rotate, and the plan was to come back in at like 10, 11
Yeah.
and wrap up. But then we saw on the Nextdoor app that there was a Pyrenees that was running around that has been posted a few times. So we went and chased him and tried to catch him. Just typical rescue. So let's wrap up episode 1.
Dear.
All right.
It's going to take us forever.
No, we're at Nova. So.
Oh, yes. You fostering Nova.
Yes. So walk us through, I guess, because this is up until the point we met.
Yep.
Bringing Nova by.
Yep. So Duke filled out a foster application and checked off all the boxes that I needed at the time. And I brought Nova over. His dog and Nova went on a quick walk together, but they didn't really care for one another. I think Nova barked at Thea a few times.
Though is the bestest.
Yeah, she is the bestest good girl ever.
And very well trained.
Absolutely.
So
Duke showed me the training that Thea had gone through, and her recall was flawless. So I felt really comfortable leaving Nova there. And so he started fostering Nova shortly after that. That was just the initial meet, correct? Correctly.
No, back then it was same day.
It was same day? I can't remember. So
yeah, we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore.
Also broke some of the rules. It was me.
Anyways, and not the rules that you guys are thinking. Get your head out of the gutter. So
I think the rescue wasn't necessarily like early on quite as polished. Like 6 years later,
you
go through different
learn
experiences, and like we're constantly updating the contract and the
Right.
protocol. But it was still very much like meet and greet, pack walk, make sure the dynamic's good, home
Right.
check, setting up supplies, getting supplies, stuff like that.
Yeah. And we try to teach other younger rescues now, but we don't really insert ourselves in people's business. Like if someone reaches out and asks questions, absolutely, we are an open book. But if we see something on social media, we're not going to message a rescue and be like, hey, you should be doing it this way, because people did that to me when I started the rescue, and I was like, Okay. So anyways, so he was fostering Nova, got her all healed up. I had a conversation with Duke and his girlfriend at the time. Like, look, his owner reached back out, or Nova's owner reached back out. He's interested in, seeing if he could take her back. And it was a hard discussion, right? Because they bonded with Nova and they got her all healthy, but legally, technically, Nova was still his dog, and he was a good guy. So we tried. We dropped Nova back off, and within a few weeks, I went back to go see her, and I would check in via text, and he wasn't that far from where I lived. Yeah. And unfortunately, it just wasn't going to be a good fit. Nova.
I was pissed with the situation. So he was living in an RV.
Yeah.
So it was, and somebody had actually broken into his RV
and assaulted him.
Assaulted him. And not that I'm not sympathetic towards people, but even before I started running the rescue, Nova was my foster dog.
Right.
She was my priority. So I was pissed that she was put in that situation again. So Steph and I had a little bit of a discussion.
Yeah.
About kind of how that played out. But I also understand, like I said, learning more about this guy. He was a good guy trying to do right by Nova.
Right.
And he did end up realizing that wasn't the play for him. We did also, so you guys know, I actually offered him a job. He didn't take me up on it, but I offered to help him get fixed up, drive him out to Arizona and give him a job, let him stay at the property. And he turned me down, which was, for me, kind of that closure of I kind of extended that olive branch
Right.
to get you to a place where you could take your dog back, and
Yeah.
that's a whole.
Well, he ended up going
rabbit hole.
into like a halfway home. But anyways,
Yeah.
so that was how Duke and I kind of started working together in rescue.
Mm-hmm.
And so then Nova went back to Duke, and we found this amazing adopter, Aaron, and we actually drove Nova out to Colorado, is where she met us. Because she met us in Idaho. She lived in Colorado, right?
Yeah. We had to
Years
flash
ago.
forward. That's way down the line.
Yeah. So at this point, where am I in the story?
Yeah, you fast forwarded over a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what part?
Well, so Nova didn't go because in between Nova, I had Amber.
True.
Right. So I had Amber, who was a little hospice tripod pitty.
Right.
She was my first kind of hospice case dog. Yeah. She was my
Okay.
first hospice dog.
Yeah, that was tough. That was tough on both of us. But
Yeah.
so you had Amber for a little bit. Amber unfortunately had some really great days and then not so great days leading up to making the decision to cross her over. It was her time, and that was Duke's first experience with the rescue of having a hospice case dog. And I think everyone's first hospice case dog really sucks and it sticks with you. But it either, oh my God, I never want to do that again, or oh my God, I need to do this for all of the hospice dogs that are out there. And I think for Duke, it was that.
That's what I tell people all the time. You'll do it and realize that it absolutely destroys you and you never want to do it again.
Right.
Or you realize that it absolutely destroys you and you have to do it again.
Right.
And I was the latter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had Amber, and then you had Liam.
Liam was further too. And also at this point, because Steph and I met, I don't know what year it was, but it was almost a year and a half, 2 years later, where we're both single from the first time we had met.
I think it was like a year and a half.
Year and a half, yeah. So flash forward, just so the story doesn't get confusing here. Both single
Yeah.
at this point. And I know a lot of people also ask what our first interaction was like, because I think most people think,
Oh, was it
because
love
of
at
our
first
dynamic,
sight?
yeah, was it? So I'm interviewing you, I guess. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, was it love at first sight and fireworks and
No.
butterflies? No.
No, I keep everything really, really professional. I met Duke, and I obviously met his girlfriend at the time, and I was like, okay, well, these are the Fosters. They're wonderful people. Like, and I never, like, yeah, he's a good looking guy, but I was married at the time. Like, I didn't see Duke in that light at all.
Even to the point we had separated, we were both single.
Yeah.
It wasn't a quick like transition. It's funny because we've had this conversation before too.
Right.
It was actually to the point where, Steph and I, between fostering dogs, learning more about rescue, Steph was trying to hook me up with different people or offering to go be a wingman.
Yeah,
at
I was
the
like,
bar.
let's get you out there, like, because he's a pretty like quiet person, and outside of going to the gym or going to get worked on when he was still playing baseball, like he wasn't going out. And
No, I mean, I coached,
and I'm a super social person.
tactical training,
Yeah.
gym, and
So I'm like,
my dog, and that was my life, like fostering. So yeah, Steph was trying to set
Yeah, I
me
was like,
up
if
and-
if you're ready to get out there, like I could be your wingman if you need someone to go to the bar with. And
Yeah.
I think no, at the time I wasn't bartending anymore, but I obviously I had connections everywhere. I was like, hey, let's
Steph
get you
was a
out.
social butterfly, so I think it bothered Steph that I wasn't interested in. But we had discussions about like, okay, well, what are you looking for?
Well, hold on, time out. We had discussions not about like relationship stuff just yet, but it was funny. We were talking about like just rescue in life, and he's like, well, where do you want to take the rescue? Like, what do you want to do with the rescue? What's the dream with the rescue? And I was like, I want to be able to have a piece of property where I can build out a sanctuary. Like that's the dream. I want to be surrounded by animals shoveling shit all day. And I was like, well, you're kind of getting into rescue now, because at this time I would give him like little jobs to do, because he's like, I want to learn more about rescue. And I was like, all right, well, there's this meet and greet I have to go do, and there's this foster I have to go check on, and I would give him tasks to do. And I was like, well, what do you want to do in rescue? He's like, well, kind of the same thing. I've always had a dream of having a piece of property with a bunch of animals and having a sanctuary. And so I think at that, around that moment, I was like, interesting. I was like, do I feel anything? No, I don't feel anything.
No.
And I think it was like months after where we were having a conversation at night, and I was like, do you feel something? Is this odd? And he's like, oh, finally you said something. Like, I thought it was just me.
Steph,
And I was like,
blank, that was verbatim what she said.
yeah, I was like,
we were in the middle of a conversation, and yeah, you just stopped.
I just felt butterflies. I was like, do you feel something? Because this just like feels different. This feels weird now. Because it wasn't just like a friendly conversation that we were so used to having. Like it was like a friend.
Yeah.
You know, it never felt like a romantic relationship up until that night where I was like,
I was I think a couple hours ahead of Steph because I remember exactly when it happened.
yeah. Well, what happened for you?
For Steph.
Yeah.
And then I kind of sat on it being the shy person I am because I thought it was weird. But we'll get to that when Steph interviews me as far as exactly when I felt it.
Yeah.
Because I remember it vividly to this day where I knew.
Okay. Well, he knew.
Yeah. But.
So, I mean, so after that, then things kind of started to move quickly.
Yeah.
Like after we kind of both voiced like, yeah, I feel something, you feel something. Oh, and it was an oh, because we had just gotten out of really long relationships. Mm-hmm. And, you know, both of us were not looking for anything.
No, I actually told Steph that I wanted
closer.
I had actually told Steph that I wanted to date a what?
A nurse.
That's they would be gone at night all day, and I could just do my thing and have minimal interaction with people.
He's like, yeah, my ideal girlfriend would be a nurse because she would work long hours and be out of the house. I'm like, okay.
I'm not a big people person.
No, kind of funny because we spend every waking moment together now, but yeah. So after we kind of said it out loud, it moved really quickly. Mm-hmm. You know, with Duke, it was a breakup. With me, it was a divorce. So it was like just a little bit messier. And I use air quotations on that. It was a little messier because there was things that needed to be like separated and stuff. But both separations were, what's the word I'm looking for? Like friendly. Like there wasn't no animosity.
No, like overall, I mean, it was different situations. Obviously, I mean, I was still dating my ex for how long? Goodness. Just as long as you were married.
Yeah.
I guess, but not married. So on your end, it was more separating stuff and paperwork and stuff like that. You know, I got together very, very young with my ex. Right. Then like a sophomore in high school. So it was one of those things where we were both drifting apart for a while, but in that comfortable spot. Right. So it wasn't like a massive shock. Right. At that point. You know what I mean?
Well, we're not interviewing you. Okay.
It's your story. Keep going. Sorry.
So at this point, I think we were both looking for like a fresh start. Duke was already thinking about moving to Texas.
Not thinking, I was going.
Oh, he was going. That's right. He had a whole countdown on his social media stories one day. And, I think at this, no, you didn't tell me, but this was before we kind of said those words to each other. Mm-hmm. And then after we kind of, you know, told each other that we had feelings for one another, I was like, okay, so what's the plan? You're still going to Texas? And he's like, yeah, I'm still going to Texas. And I'm like, well, I mean, with the divorce, I feel like I need a fresh start. And, you know, every time I go to the gym, you know, the ex is there. I have to kind of tiptoe around what grocery store I'm going to and things like that. Like I would rather just start fresh somewhere else. And funny enough, I kind of spoke it into existence, but an old employer of mine reached out and said, hey, just checking in. We have a position opening up in marketing, but you have to move to Dallas. And I was like, done. And literally within like 30 days, I, you know, made all the arrangements that needed to be made in California. My ex kept one of our dogs that we had together, and then I took the other two. And Duke and I started our little journey to Texas. And the rest is history. But
The
yeah.
rest will pick up on later.
Yeah, the rest we'll pick up on later, because then, then it's we got here and we were in McKinney and then we bought this piece of property and we're building stuff out. So, but that's like the short version, even though it lasted an hour, of kind of how we got to almost this point. Nothing was easy.
No.
There were some really difficult times in rescue, in personal life.
Well, it's a lot. I mean, you figure, again, like things progressed quickly.
Right.
Once we said those words to each other, I mean, like it's a fairly irresponsible thing when you think about it. The idea of setting out, starting sanctuary, moving to Texas,
right?
It was a lot
with a person you just started seeing. Like, it sounds crazy. Like, if one of my girlfriends came to me and said, "Oh, I just got a divorce and I met this guy and we have this dream of building an animal sanctuary together. We're moving to Texas." I'd be like, the you are like, actually, where are my friends? Why didn't my friends try to talk me out of this? Because that's all. Any friend that would have come to me and said that to me, I'd have been like, you need to be on medication. Like,
actually, the 3 friends of yours that I met love me.
Yeah, that's BS. Like, guys, that was a SOS. Like, someone
shout out Nia Lindsay.
Like, y'all should have said something. But anyways, yeah, no, everyone was super supportive. Everyone saw how happy I was, and the fact that Duke is such an amazing person, like when you meet him and stuff. So everyone was supportive of the decision, except my mom.
Crazy.
Not about Duke, but about moving to Texas. She was not happy. So again, like leaving LA for the second time, she was not happy that I was moving to Texas. But once she realized that I wasn't backing down, she was like, "Okay, well, I gotta support you now." So that's the story. That's the story of how I got into rescue.
Yeah. So this is Diaries of a Dog Rescue.
Episode 1.
Episode 1, just to wrap up. So episode 2, we'll talk about my childhood growing up.
Yep.
What kind of drove me to this.
Yep.
Up until the point I met Steph from my view, and got to Texas. And then the episodes after this are going to be a lot slower, like less ground covered. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say slower, because I felt like I feel like people are like, "Oh my God, is she ever going to get this story out?"
No, I think it's good. I think it's good. But there's a lot more to get into kind of on a monthly basis. Like if we start at the house in McKinney and the dogs we had and the crew we had, it's not so much a breeze to get through.
Right.
So I think it'll be a good series where you guys can really kind of dive into the behind the scenes of Steph and I, and how we started at a 3-bedroom house, bought sight unseen in McKinney, Texas with 7 dogs, and ended up here. So,
with 34.
That's episode 1. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, and
ring the bell.
And ring the bell.
Thank you for watching.
Thanks, guys.
And listening to my long ass story. Okay, bye now.
Bye. Break.